Hello, everyone. We've returned back to the studio to talk about 2024 in film. Damon Allred, Brandon King. Damon, how did we get here?
Well, a long year, and it really felt like some of the movies here maybe didn't reach the highs of 2023 that those movies reached, but I think we still had a pretty good movie year. Obviously, a lot of variety across the board. Not a ton of superhero movies in 2024.
We won't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like for years it was just a superhero movie would be crowning the box office every year, and this year, I mean, almost none to be found at the top of the box office.
I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine did.
Right.
And next year looks to be, I think, fairly promising, but that's certainly a conversation we had about this year.
Duds like Kraven the Hunter as well. I mean, yeah, but we can get into it.
Yeah, a certain sect of movies dominating that genre. But it's funny because I was thinking on the way here, 2023, when we did last year, I remember us really going back and forth on our five. And I remember distinctly telling you of just I think literally 2 nights before when we were finalizing our graphics, it was the thing of I have 15, 20 movies that I could feasibly choose from. And I have the same thing here, but like what you said, last year it was a thing where I had 8, 9, maybe 10 that I could defend with my entire chest of these are phenomenal pieces of filmmaking that everyone needs to see. And this year, it's more of my 5. It was literally a thing where I have a lot of really good movies and not a ton of upper echelon movies. So it's not to say that this year was a worse filmmaking year by any means, but I did find myself thinking that of why is that? And so I hope to work through that today.
Yeah, the depth of elite movies, it feels like just wasn't there this year. I was at maybe 7 or 8 movies that I could totally defend this year. But we came down to 5, and I feel pretty good about my 5. Do you feel pretty good about your 5?
I do as well. We'll talk about our honorable mentions at the end. But yeah, let's pop into the number 5 pick.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to get these going as we go. My number 5 is Civil War. What is yours?
Mine is Conclave. I thought you might go with Civil War on this, and this was probably the one that we're going to be the most divisive on, as is the movie. Please talk about it.
So I really like Civil War. I think that one thing we're going to see as we go through my top 5 is that really what I latched onto this year is some outstanding performances, and I think Civil War has quite a few incredible ones. I think Kaylee Spaney is top of the list there for me.
Fair enough.
I really love the way Alex Garland handles her story in terms of juxtaposing her rise with Kirsten Dunst's decline in the journalism industry. And I really feel like the war stuff and all that is kind of incidental or just plot vessel to get to that point of these 2 journalism arcs. And so it'll be really interesting to see where Alex Garland goes. Obviously, he's got the Wartime or something called movie coming out.
Yeah,
literally depicting Iraq War.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to that one?
I'm intrigued. I saw a brief teaser on an ad before I actually skipped it. I do need to look into the whole thing. I know that DeFero Wunatai from Reservation Dogs is a part of it or something like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously written and directed by an Iraqi war veteran, and so a lot of it is supposed to be true to form for that, but Civil War, we mentioned Jesse Plemons as well kind of steals the show.
Movie.
Yeah. I mean, super startling moments where you're just I don't know if I can handle what I'm watching right now.
Yep.
There were some real moments where you're might I need to get out in a second? But I think it all turned out well. I think that, Jesse Plemons obviously, he has that ability to, in just moments, steal a movie completely. How can that be profitable for Frito-Lay type of stuff? But
I mean, even something like Kinds of Kindness this year, which
exactly.
I don't think is on either of our lists, but he's fantastic in that.
Yeah, I definitely don't have it on my list, but yeah, he steals the show in that one too.
It's interesting because I can agree with most things that you're saying about Civil War. I do think Kaylee Spaney is fantastic. I think Kirsten Dunst and Wagner Moura are really terrific as well. It's a great, solid ensemble. And if Garland's goal, as I think I told you at the time, was to create a mood of chaos, an environment of complete uncertainty for a character study in this vein, I think he succeeded. I don't think as a narrative or as a cautionary tale or what he's going for necessarily works, but that's not the discussion on here. Conclave is mine. I've seen this twice. I saw it once for the press screening, and then I just went to go see it for a second time around. The second time it really, I mean, I loved it the first time around, but the third act in particular, which I was the most conflicted about, I think really worked in the long run as far as the story of the main Cardinals. For anyone who doesn't know, again, Conclave, big awards contender this year. The Pope dies. The Cardinals have to go into Vatican City and choose the new one. Ralph Fiennes plays the main one. Isabel Rossellini, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and Carlos Diaz, and a great supporting, an incredible ensemble in this movie. It's genuinely one of my favorite of the year. And on a technical level, did you watch All Quiet on the Western Front about 2 years ago?
I did not.
This is Ed Berger, the same director as that, and I was not enthralled by that movie. I was totally drained by it because I think that was absolutely the goal. This is not nearly as draining. This is thrilling and gripping and really delves into a lot of real deep machinations of organizations and systems that would sustain to achieve power, and what that looks like and what does that mean for their constituents and people around them, and the kind of shifting moralities of it all. And it does feel like a very shifting movie. Like every 5 minutes, there is something new about one of the Cardinals that pops up. Edward Berger and I'm forgetting Peter Straughn, the screenwriter. They do a magnificent job of maintaining that, and it's a really tricky balance. And it's something that I struggled with the first time around. But the second time, when I knew when to pick out the points and could just let everything in the middle set, I think it's genuinely one of the most gripping, interesting movies of the year.
And I think something that's really important to point out about Conclave is that, a lot of the times you might think of Pope dies, Cardinals got to pick a new Pope. That's the movie. You might think of that as a premise being kind of heavier or slower, not as fun. This is a fun watch.
Yep.
Like you mentioned how things change very quickly. I think that gives it a lot of life and a lot of pace to it that I think is kind of needed when a movie is so confined into a premise like that. I think it's really fun.
And like Civil War, it does a great job of setting you into this. Again, I think the difference is that I don't think Civil War does necessarily enough, but they both do that thing of putting you into a world and explaining just enough of it to let you move through it.
Yeah, and the twists that it has at the end are, flat out jaw-dropping too.
Yes.
So it was really good to watch. We got a Timothée Chalamet number 4 here.
I want to hear from you on this because I didn't get to put it on my 5.
Okay, so I was just... And, I mentioned it with number 5. Performances are going to be the theme for me today. Timothée Chalamet, Melissa Barbaro as Joanne Baez, Elle Fanning, obviously, they really just captured what it feels like, I think, to be connected as people who are in their positions. Obviously, musicians like that are going through a lot of stuff that some of it is under their control and some of it is not. And obviously things are a lot different back then than they are now in terms of like the mediascape of it all and things like that. But I think Timothée Chalamet just captures what Bob Dylan is,
Yep.
Like in the stretches of the movie where Bob Dylan turns into a total jerk. I think Timothée Chalamet captures that really well. I think that we've talked about his singing off air, talked about how he worked 3 years on this, and the COVID delay that happened in this movie kind of
strikes.
Right, and kind of benefited it. And so I think for Timothée to do what he's done, he's kind of on a half-decade run right now that is just totally feeding into my taste. Bones and All, French Dispatch, Don't Look Up, Little Women. The list goes on and on. This year he's got Marty Supreme with Josh Safdie coming out as well.
Whatever that's going to be.
I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's Safdie and Chalamet. I'm in.
That could be one of about a dozen different things.
Right. So I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, Dune was, I think, my number 6 or so.
Okay.
So it didn't quite make it, but, Timothée is incredible in that as well. I almost wish that you could vote for Best Actor and put 2 movies together to say, like, his performance this year deserves to be Best Actor, because I think it does.
Well, I remember even as far back as like 2015, 2016, whatever it was, when Alicia Vikander won for The Danish Girl, there were a lot of people saying, no, she's winning for this and Ex Machina. Mm-hmm. So there is kind of this spiritual thing with the Oscars on that. It is funny now that it took me a minute to realize that our number 4 is the Timothée Chalamet slot. It took me a minute. But yeah, I think you had part 2 on our mid-year list when we did it back in May.
Sounds about right.
One of us did, because I think I asked you and one of us did.
I felt very strongly about it. The worm writing, my goodness.
What Denis Villeneuve manages to do with this, and why he is not a lock for director at this point, is a question that scientists will be studying for decades to come. He puts everything into this, and it's not just, one of, again, the best, maybe my best theme is ensemble casts, although with a notable exception. But genuinely, I mean, Chalamet, as you said, when we talk, because I didn't get to put a Complete Unknown on mine, but when I was watching Complete Unknown, there were parts of it early on in the first third where I did see, Paul Atreides in this, from both kind of the shyness and bewilderment of part one, and also the kind of stern reluctancy of part two. And then at a certain point, it just kind of fades away, and Mangold does magic with Complete Unknown. But with Dune Part 2, I think what he is able to capture in that, the progression of a leader who is so deeply conflicted, but also on some level so sure of what he's doing, and so sure of his own priorities, and so sure of his own place in the world that it almost gets the better of him. And we will see what Dune Messiah winds up being. Rebecca Ferguson, amazing. Javier Bardem, still one of my favorite supporting actor performances of the year. Florence Pugh, Austin Butler, the list goes on and on of the incredible performances in this. Greig Fraser shoots the living godlight out of it, literally. And just...
Not doing Messiah, though, it sounds like?
Is he not?
I think that I saw that. Let me double check while you...
Please double check.
Yeah.
I'd be very disappointed if he wasn't, but I would totally get it, because it's a grueling shoot. But yeah, as far as what he's able to do with this, and I mean Denis specifically, there's just a firm grasp on what this story needs to be, the scale of it all, and it seems like it would overwhelm anyone else. And I can't say necessarily that, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049 necessarily prepared him wholeheartedly to do this. But I will say that at this point in his career, it does feel like we have a Denis Villeneuve who can do no wrong. And that's a scary thing to have as a critic, because you never want to imagine a filmmaker as totally infallible. But it is one of those things where watching Dune Part 2, I was like, I don't know if you could do better than this.
It's funny you bring up Arrival, because I just the other day got the Blu-ray for it and watched it again. And so... I think it's so amazing how much you can feel Dune in Arrival and vice versa.
Yeah.
I think he's just gotten really good at making a kind of movie that I think we really need, because not a lot of other directors are able to make that kind of movie right now.
You know what? And I just came to, he makes movies with weight.
Yeah.
Like Arrival, there's like a physical pressure underneath everything. Blade Runner, even with Prisoners or something like that. And both of the Dunes, there is the weight of the universe slowly kind of pressing down on everything and everyone. And that pressure creates diamonds, I guess, in this case. And it just makes something really, really special.
Yeah, and on Fraser, we did learn, yes, he will not be returning for Messiah. Okay. It will be Linus Sandgren of La La Land fame. Yeah.
We're fine.
Yeah, it's still in a good spot, I think, so we'll be looking forward to doing Messiah when it comes. I've got Longlegs.
I figured as much. In a complete juxtaposition.
This is so funny, because it's exactly our personal preferences. You have been riding the Thelma train all year long.
I'm sorry, this is just complete... Just talk about Longlegs.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
So Longlegs, again, I've mentioned performances over and over. Micah Monroe and Nick Cage. Nick Cage as a Satanist, as like a 70s rock star Satanist. It's just hilarious casting, I think, and the way that his character is positioned adds to the hilarity of it. Osgood Perkins talked about wanting him to seem like, almost like a washed up, pathetic, tried to become a rock star in the 70s and do hair rock, but couldn't make it out. T-Rex is a big part of the movie in that sense. The movie opens on Get It On, which is pretty cool, I think. So just the performances that those two have to make it unsettling. I think that the Silence of the Lambs comparison is very apt that people have been using. Obviously, there's a lot of really cool puzzle moments that are like akin to Zodiac almost. And so all of this comes together to create what I think is maybe the best, detective horror thriller type of movie that we've had in quite a while. And I'm excited for what Osgood Perkins does next. He's got The Monkey coming out in a month, which is going to be very violent and gross, it seems, and should be same kind of vein as Longlegs.
And a marketing campaign for the ages that I think built up a lot of really necessary mystery about it.
Right. There's a scene where Micah's character first goes in to interrogate Nick Cage's character, and for a specific piece of marketing, they attached a mic to Micah's, funny enough, a mic to Micah's heartbeat. And so in some of the marketing for this, you can hear Micah's heartbeat as she goes in to see Nick Cage for the first time when they're filming this.
Right.
You know, she had not seen what the character was supposed to look like at all. And you just see, or you hear her heartbeat as she's going into this room. And it's incredible because it's exactly the feeling that you get when you end up getting to that scene, which ends up playing out incredibly. I think it's one of the most memorable moments of a very memorable movie.
Fair enough. And then on the complete other side, one of the most delightful movies of the year.
Yeah.
Thelma from Josh Margolin with June Squibb as a 90-year-old retiree who, I mentioned this in the mid-year list, I mentioned this in the Phoenix Film Festival recap. Like you say, I've been banging this gong for almost a year now. A 90-year-old retiree gets her money stolen in a phone scam and goes on a wild goose chase through Los Angeles to hopefully get it back as her family, played by Fred Heschinger and Parker Posey and Clark Gregg, do whatever they can to make sure she is safe. Also, one of the final performances of Richard Roundtree, who is excellent in this. June Squibb is the main story behind this. She is, again, why she is not in the Best Actress roundtable can only be studied by scientists for decades. Again, talk about the bias in comedy however you want at the Academy. I think it's more nuanced than that. But she's spectacular in this. She does everything that is asked of her and then some. She does all of her own stunts in them, which has been much publicized, which are obviously not huge because she's 91 years old. But they're incredibly, I mentioned at the time to the press people when I told them about the movie, there's a kind of thing, we talked about Dune and its heaviness. There is a sort of heaviness to this in that just a step can be so deadly and debilitating to someone of that age, and trying to, trek across all of Los Angeles to do this. It's also a movie that deeply loves Los Angeles, and I think that's kind of timely at the moment, and I found that really resonant. It's also a movie that when I saw for the first time at Phoenix Film Festival, I had just lost my grandmother for about 2 months. It made me sob at the very end. And so I think there's a lot of stuff really resonant about the relationship between her and Fred Heschinger as grandparents and grandchildren can be. That idea of sometimes we can only see family members as certain things, and then we have to have our eyes open to what they can do, what they're able to do, what they're willing to do for you. And that kind of relationship really just solidified me as, this isn't just really cool, zany kind of chase movie with, great score and cinematography and great direction. It is all of those things. But I also think it's something much deeper about how we look at family, how we look at older relatives, and how we look at sometimes systems that the movie goes into that will occasionally put those people in really difficult, precarious places that they then have to take into their own hands. And I think it's a really special movie. It's
funny, the premise kind of mirrors The Beekeeper if you take out Jason Statham. And so it's funny that those two movies came out this year at the same time.
I can't believe in our Best of the Year movie you're mentioning The Beekeeper.
It's just a very similar premise. And obviously this one is a lot more interesting because instead of like a big macho guy beating up some rich people, it's, a 90-year-old grandma who's getting her revenge.
Yeah, it's the thing of like, well, she can't just get in fistfights. So like, what is the action going to be?
Right.
And again, Josh Margolin finds just these really creative action set pieces that are so mundane and yet are so serious.
Yeah, and so this movie is totally deserving of people's time. I hope that they go out and view it before the Oscars so that they can realize how much the Oscars is missing out by not including it.
I'm going to be sitting there Oscar morning and just like that 1% thing in my mind of just like, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 2, my runner-up, and frankly, my best actress, if we had it our way, was Strange Darling. I think Willa Fitzgerald is incredible in that one.
You have been ringing this bell for 4 months? It's been September, right?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I think it might have been August even.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
I saw it 4 times in theaters.
Yeah, you were raving about this to me.
Yeah.
Like, I have rarely seen you so excited to talk about a movie.
This was another big marketing thing where, because of how little marketing there was and people only knew like almost a 1-sentence idea of the movie, which is a one-night stand gone wrong, and like that's enough to get all you need to know going in. And I think that the twists that it pulls are some of the best that I've ever seen in any movie. And I think Willa Fitzgerald, she has talked about how, like, in approaching this movie, it became the most important thing for her to just worry about her connection between any other actors that are also on screen at the time. And so I think that you really feel that in her performance. I mean, she's just incredible. She portrays like 12 different emotions in like a 90-minute span.
And there's 6 segments to do, and sometimes she has to do a dozen of those in a single segment.
Yeah, so good point you bring this up. It tells it out of order. It's in 6 chapters, and it's never in chronological order. And I think that really adds to it, too, to kind of build up the twists and kind of set you up. And obviously it's being very manipulative in that sense, but it's a manipulation that I really can't find fault with. Just because Willa and Kyle Gallner, the other star next to her, are both so incredible together. And obviously there's the little thing that shows up at the start of the movie that says shot only in 35mm film. We've talked about this, about how
you have to have some serious kind of arrogance to go like, yeah, I shot this on film.
You 100% do have to have some arrogance about it, but I think if you're able to back it up like this one can, because it looks incredible for 100% of the movie, I think it's okay.
And Giovanni Ribisi, like the actor, shot this.
And he said he's going to do more of this because he gets a lot more fulfillment out of cinematography than acting.
Good on him.
Like, he's got it figured out. He's got a lane. Like, let's just see him cook for a while.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned to you, I really couldn't make a 100% judgment on this movie until I saw it for a second time, because my big reservation to you was that
the twists.
Not necessarily even the twist, just the out of sequencing and the idea of would that, because I think on a first time watch it totally works, but I don't know if you're going into it looking for further details, if it really offers anything thematically, character-wise, even world-building, aside from just kind of that roller coaster aspect of it. You took a lot more from it than I did, but I agree, Willa Fitzgerald is a star. I don't know why I hadn't heard of her before. And Kyle Gallner is also excellent.
And he was awesome for a short stint at the beginning of Smile 2, earlier this year. Also.
Is he in Smile 2?
Yeah, just for a tad.
Oh, okay.
He's very short in there and makes the most of it.
I will not be seeing that, unfortunately.
Yeah, Smile 2 doesn't strike me as a Brandon movie.
Future me, if you do get into horror movies, go ahead and comment like I did see Smile 2 finally. You're doing it. Mine is The Brutalist for number 2. And this was the toughest part of the list. The 1 and the 2 were really back and forth for me.
So we're going to have the same number 1 is what this is indicating to me.
I don't think we will.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you why.
You think you know what my number 1 is?
No, I think your number 1 is not mine, because I don't think you love it as much.
Oh, okay.
But The Brutalist, I reviewed over on our KTAR TikTok at KTAR News if you want to go check that out. It's astounding. And it's been praised as that to high heaven for 4 or 5 months when the festival circuit started rolling around. And I think a lot of us, especially those of us who were slightly familiar with Brady Corbett, i.e. me, like I didn't see Vox Lux, I didn't see her first movie. I knew him more from his acting work. And so to hear that, Adrian Brody's this big prestige drama coming out, like it's over 3 hours, there's this intermission, but it's also apparently this really gripping, riveting thing. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's so Brady Corbett. Wow. Why didn't I watch Vox Lux earlier? Like maybe I would have had some precedence going in, but maybe the directing job that really just blew my socks off this year. Like how, even with Denis Villeneuve, and that's saying something because Denis Villeneuve works his ass off on Dune Part 2, but it is very much a thing where I really think that what Brady Corbett is able to do in getting all of these disparate elements together, these ideas of, first of all, Adrian Brody's performance. Should win Best Actor, I will be cheering for him. It's the obvious choice. I'm sorry, he just deserves it. Every emotion he has to play is chalked up to 10. He is, but not in ways that would seem overbearing, in ways that seem completely natural to the character. And again, if you want the synopsis, just go watch the TikTok review. But Felicity Jones and Alessandro Nivola, who pops up for a minute. Guy Pearce is phenomenal as this eccentric billionaire who doesn't really know what he wants, but seems to have this profound connection that he has with Adrian Brody's character. The production design is off the wall. Law Crowley's cinematography is stark and blissful from just the first couple of minutes. The intermission that you might think is a gimmick, like that 35mm with Strange Darling, it totally earns it. Like from the minute Act 1 ends to the intermission to the first start of Act 2, it really just feels like this cohesive thing of, I needed this, and now we can move on to all of the other stuff that this movie is getting to. And there is a lot from sexual identity to immigration stories to the woes of capitalism. Like there is so much this movie tries to tackle, and a lesser filmmaker and a lesser script. Shout out to Mona Fastfold, who is Brady Corbett's partner who co-wrote this. They do a magnificent job layering everything on top of one another. And the last couple of minutes that I've seen a lot of discussion online whether or not they really work or not, I'm still not totally in that camp, and it's that, and again, that 3+ hour runtime that is why this is the runner-up, not number one. But overall, this is a massive achievement. I encourage any of you out there, if you are daring enough to see it, it will reward you with legions.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to Brady Corbet has talked about the final cut aspect of the director should be able to have final cut, and you can feel that he has final cut in this.
This is everything he wanted to make.
Right. And, the score is incredible. I think it should probably win Best Score if Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doesn't do it.
Daniel Bloomberg.
Yeah. Incredible. I mean, the low brass that he uses is amazing. And, oh my goodness, I can't even be able to put that into words how good that score is. And it really tackles just how long the movie is because of how much content there is in the music as well.
Yep.
Just being able to capture the different vibes. I mean, there's straight up prog jazz at points in this movie. And
they don't feel out of place.
Not at all. And it's like a trip, and it's perfect, and you're there and then you're not, and like you're not worried about, okay, is this going to turn into something I'm not really feeling, or this movie doesn't feel like? It stays in its pocket, I think, the whole time. And, you mentioned the word daring. I think that's a really good word, because I think if you wanted to pick an Oppenheimer from 2024, I think it would be The Brutalist.
It's either that or Dune.
Yeah, just because of how much of an epic it feels like, and, the time that it expands from like 20 years or so, from post-World War II into getting into the Cold War, really. Yep. And yeah, there's just not a lot to dislike about the movie, except for that runtime, which is going to be a hang-up for so many people, unfortunately, but it really does reward those who are willing to try.
Again, it's just one of those things where the movie goes on and on and on, and at a certain point, you think in the back of your head, maybe I'm getting tired of this. And I would hope that if you're gravitating towards the characters and the world and the stakes enough, a movie will reward you for that. And this does all of those things. And it goes towards that idea that we always have, like, is a movie too long? Maybe if it's not compelling, and this is the exact opposite.
Yeah. I feel like I couldn't even begin to guess, because I know what my number one is, and I think it might win Best Picture.
Oh, do you now?
Yeah. Well, I think it might, but it's been struggling at some other awards lately, and so my confidence is waning. But I'm going with Anora for my number one.
Okay.
And A Real Pain. Yeah, I do not love it as much as you do. There you go. Yeah. So feel
I'm surprised it didn't click to you early.
That's a good point. Okay, so do you want to cook on it?
Yeah, you know what? Sure, I'll cook on it first.
Yeah.
Because this will actually segue into our ending segment. There are rarely movies where I walk out of and I think to myself, yeah, this is the best movie of the year. It's happened like a couple of even Past Lives last year. I didn't walk out thinking that was, I mean, I thought it was top 10 easily, but I didn't think it would rise to the ranks. A Real Pain, literally about 10 minutes afterwards, I was driving home and I thought, I think this is my favorite movie of the year. I think. And the reason why kind of processed in that way was just, again, movies as a way of feeling and intimacy. Oh God, Brandon picks another movie where messy characters do messy things and have to find something about themselves. Past Lives, and then Everything Everywhere All at Once, and even going back to like 9 Days. Like, this is a recurring theme for me of like my number ones.
This is Brandon's top 2024.
This is Brandon
isn't anyone else's. This is Brandon's.
Yes. And I just think what Jesse Eisenberg is able to do with this, and for context, I have not seen his first movie he did, When You're Not Saving the World, or whatever it's called, with Julianne Moore and Finn Wolfhard. I didn't get to that. And I heard mixed things, and so when this was coming out, I kind of thought, okay, Jesse's trying again. This is what he should be doing. Again, this is complicated and messy and nuanced, but it's built with two characters who I just adore watching. I would watch Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin do just about anything at this point. And yes, again, if Clarence Macklin, and we've not talked about Sing Sing, but if Clarence Macklin was not deeply embedded in my heart for supporting actor, Kieran Culkin would be getting the Oscar in my mind. He's so good in this. He is a total firecracker. But again, that only goes so far. He has to imbue real tragedy and real pathos and real weight to his character that I think could turn into really cartoony antics and kind of a road trip, kind of road to movie as maybe Jesse Eisenberg was envisioning at first. But what Jesse Eisenberg, in his direction, I find a lot of weight. In his performance, I find a lot of weight. I think those are getting underappreciated. But yes, the real star is the script. I think the writing is so on lock. is so on target, I should say, with who these characters are, their struggles of, one is too socially maybe inept, too maybe comfortable in his own reality, and one who is too uncomfortable with any sort of form of, quote, reality. And that kind of existential dread is the wrong word, but confusion and exploration is buried in a movie that is fun and zany and kind of, wacky and enthralling at times, but it's also deeply tragic and understanding of, the human condition, if I can be, that pretentious about it. But it is about like what we do to try and uplift the people closest to us, even when it doesn't seem like it's working. We do it because we can, and we have to try. And that idea of, even in something like these two cousins going on a Holocaust tour, which might seem like a complete downer, there's, again, levity in there, but it never alleviates the fact that these are two people who have lost deep parts of their families, who, again, going back to even like Thelma, the idea of we sometimes think of our elders as certain things. Even going back to that, when I talked about my grandmother earlier, this hit a lot because, again, going to the idea of your grandmother's legacy and what they had to sacrifice and what your parents did, and that whole idea of where that comes in you and how can you use those lessons to, interact and uplift, hopefully, other people in times of confusion and trauma and anger and sadness. I just think this movie is so, so special. And it was one of those things where, even 2 months down the line, I'm still thinking about what it has shown me about humanity and emotion that I don't think many other movies have.
Yeah, for me, I think A Real Pain was good, not great, just because I didn't connect with it as much as you did. Because
on paper, it's not totally special.
Right. It makes sense, but I know that the Jesse Eisenberg writing is really strong and his direction was really strong. It was just an angle that maybe hit me at the wrong time in the wrong place, just because, and I know that this is on me, this is completely my own fault, but I am just feeling when I watch this a little bit too much of, connecting Jesse Eisenberg with Mark Zuckerberg in A Social Network, just because I have so much connection to that.
And what does that say about Jesse's performance in that movie?
It's really good. That's a good point. And to the same point, the Kieran Culkin, just seeing Roman Roy from Succession,
right,
and having a hard time detaching myself from that. But I do think that I felt what Jesse was trying to get at. I don't know that it hit with me because of where I am in my life right now, and obviously there are a lot of people who this was hitting really well for. This was just on that 7 or 8 out of 10 scale for me instead of that 9 or 10 like it is for a lot of people.
Fair.
Okay, yeah, my number one is Honora. And it's funny, you mentioned that your number one fits a lot of your themes year over year. My theme here is absolutely insane premises. Because we have Mikey Madison, who is my best actress, because Willa Fitzgerald will not be included, unfortunately. This is my ruining horror bias, the way you rued comedy bias earlier.
Well, it's like what I say with June Squibb. Like, you'll be waking up that morning with that 1% chance.
Willa Fitzgerald. Anyway, Mikey Madison plays a high-end stripper who happens upon a Russian oligarch child, teen, and
Mark Edelstein.
Yeah, Mark Edelstein, and they fall in love, kind of, and then hijinks ensue. And I mean, if you're just saying like those two things, like those two connecting pieces, and putting it together, I'm already like, yeah, I'm in.
But you also
let me see the movie.
But you also have certain assumptions about what that story might be.
Because Sean Baker is in there.
Yes.
And Sean Baker, my goodness, might he win Director of the Year for this? It's certainly a possibility, it feels like. It's a possibility. Denis is certainly in there as well. Brady Corbet is also in there as well. But
Ed Berger for Conclave.
Yeah, incredibly loaded director slot this year. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of power in this dialogue throughout the entire script, where 60 to 70% of it has you cackling, laughing. I just thought it was hilarious in terms of the insanity taking place. And I mean, there's still no more powerful image that sticks in my mind from 2024 film than Mikey Madison leading a pack of Armenians through a club and just looking like she's about to take on the world and nothing can stop her. And I think that just perfectly personifies what the movie is. And I think that the ending, how it ends with the titular Honora, like, I think So Mikey Madison starts off as Annie in this movie.
Right.
And toward the end, she's more Nora, it feels like. And that, to me, is the arc that makes it the number one. Because you really feel like she's developing. And, you know, I don't want to say developing, because that's kind of a weird word. But
evolving.
She's evolving. Great word. Evolving. She's evolving into this Nora rather than this more childlike Annie, it feels like. And the way that the ending shows that is really powerful and has really stuck with me in a way that not a lot of other endings this year have.
And continuing, I think, the trend of Sean Baker movies that feel the need to really exemplify their characters' most inner thoughts and turmoil as opposed to whatever the movie is asking, which could be a bad thing, except Sean Baker is so empathetic as a filmmaker and so really just deep in either Mikey Madison or Simon Rex or, you know, any of the cast of the Florida Project. Like, he wants them to be as natural as possible, and I think that lends a lot of creativity to what they're allowed to do.
There was a lot of publicity, I think maybe some controversial, about how Mikey and Sean worked together on this movie. And she talked about, you know, as much as other people don't want to give Sean Baker credit for this, you know, Mikey definitely felt comfortable on set for everything that was happening. At least that's what she says. And so I think she should totally win Best Actress of the Year for what she does in this movie.
I would not be opposed at all. So we've ran through our 5. We do have a couple that we want to run through that just weren't on our list. I know you have a shorter list than mine.
Yeah, so I've only have 2 that I wanted to mention still. You know, we talked about I had a top 7 or 8 or so that I could have put in the top 5. The ones that didn't make it were Heretic, which is the A24, you know, horror satire kind of about Mormons and, you know, the missionary experience, and 2 sister missionaries who are put forth into a little test of their belief. Hugh Grant posits, so to speak. Hugh Grant doesn't really do that. He is really just trying to mess with them, it seems.
Right.
But
and the 2 actresses are Sophie Thatcher and
Chloe East. Who both grew up in the church and wanted to not portray any like negative stereotypes, and I think they do a really good job of that. It feels really true to form in terms of everything that it touches on, and I think Hugh Grant cooks as a podcaster for parts of this movie. Then my other one is Terrifier 3, the third installment of the Art the Clown franchise. And I mean, he's just the most memorable horror franchise villain in my life at this point. I mean, I know there are people like Michael and Freddy and all that from the previous century and all that, but to me, it is Art the Clown. He is hilarious, and he just does things that no other villain does, it feels like. And I'm looking forward to, it seems like, up to 7 Terrifier movies. This one was the most profitable movie of 2024, made 45 times its budget. So thank you to the horror fans for going out and representing.
It's what we talk about with box office all the time. Never underestimate horror fans.
Never underestimate horror fans.
I have a couple of quick ones just to run through. I tried not to include any from my mid-year list. Go back and watch that if you want to see what any of those were. I still love all of them the same. Dee Dee from Sean Wong, I think, is maybe one of the most unsettlingly relatable movies of the year. I wish I could go into that, but it's incredible. My Old Ass, which I know you and I both really liked.
Just outside my top 7 or 8.
Megan Park is a genius. I'll watch whatever she does next. Payal Kapadia's All We Imagine Is Light. Did you get to that?
I did not, but it's a cinematography one, right?
It's a big international feature contender and also cinematography about 3 women in India going through different phases of their life, and I don't want to spoil too much, but I think it's really beautiful and brilliant. Also on my list, Sugarcane, maybe my favorite documentary of the year about the Canadian Indigenous school system. It's a brutal watch, but it's also kind of beautiful at times in what the directors are trying to really accomplish with that. And on the complete other side of that, Hundreds of Beavers, maybe the most unique comedy I have seen in years. It's wonderful. It's free on Tubi, at least as far as right now. I hope that doesn't get taken off soon. But please go watch it. It's zany and wonderful, and just I love it.
We love beavers. Big fans of beavers over here.
Yes. And as we get into the end of this, we've talked about a couple of awards contenders on this. The Oscars are coming up we hope fairly soon.
Obviously, terrible things going on right now with the fire, hoping that all is able to be solved as quickly and effectively as possible. Obviously, a lot of firefighters out there that have put in incredible work so far already.
And just copious donations from a lot of, even groups out here in Arizona, but just across the country and even the world, who have gone to Los Angeles to try and help. And it's really reassuring for a lot of that community. If, however, we do get to that point where the Oscars are going on as planned, they'll be in at least a couple of days as far as from we're taping this. It could be longer. We intend to talk about it when and if that comes about. As far as we have talked about, we talked about a couple of contenders, Anora, Conclave. Where are you looking at with sort of the Oscars race right now? What's standing out to you as far as potential big races?
Well, so we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm watching this Timothée Chalamet, Adrian Brody race just in terms of, will Adrian Brody be able to pull it out just off the strength of The Brutalist? And also, will Timothée Chalamet voters be able to unite behind one movie?
Right.
You know, it could be like almost in the way that, you know, a third-party candidate can steal away votes from one candidate. It might be where a complete unknown is stealing away votes from his Dune performance or vice versa. And so you're hoping that if you're Timothée Chalamet, obviously you're hoping that if these voters can unite behind one cause and that be an award rather than 2 nominations and no win, you know, that type of thing. So I think The Brutalist, Anora, and for some reason Emilia Perez are the 3 biggest Best Picture contenders right now.
Have you seen Emilia Perez yet?
I have, yeah.
I still have not gotten to it. I intend to by the time we talk about this.
It's in my top 15 or so on the year, but it is not the Best Picture contender that the previous awards, you know, obviously the Golden Globes, it won Best Picture there, right? I do not get that, straight up. I mean, musical or comedy, I think that should have gone to Anora.
I don't disagree with that at all. Even Wicked, potentially. Yeah. Which we didn't talk about in this, but I really liked Wicked. I think for me, actor is kind of the big thing where it seems like, you know, Chalamet, Fiennes, Domingo, and Brody. And who's going to be that number 5? It's
Chalamet.
An exception, finally. It seems like it's either going to be Daniel Craig for Queer or Sebastian Stan for either A Different Man or The Apprentice. He's been having a phenomenal year. And I don't know which one I lean towards. My heart wants to go Sebastian Stan just because I loved both of those roles so much. Even just as far as we're speaking, the BAFTAs just came out last night and Daniel Craig did not make that. So I don't know what his chances look like. But also your boy Hugh Grant, who got a Critics' Choice nomination. Either Critics' Choice or SAG, I forget which one, but he got one of them, and so he's on the board now.
I think the SAG was very big fans of Heretic, if I'm remembering correctly. I think Sophie Thatcher may have also gotten a look there. But while we're mentioning A Different Man, I want to talk about also A Better Man. Not that this, because this isn't 2024 or anything, but I just want to use this platform real quick.
But could be a dark horse for visual effects, I want to point out.
Could be, yeah. May also show up in original song. Were there any originals in there?
It got disqualified for song.
Okay, makes sense. But anyway, I think that I just want to use this platform real quick to say people should watch Better Man. Like, they should go out and watch the movie where a monkey plays a rock star. Like, ignore that it's Robbie Williams if you have no idea who Robbie Williams is and you're like, what interest do I have in a Robbie Williams biopic?
Right.
You don't need to think about it as a Robbie Williams biopic. I went in there not knowing who Robbie Williams was at all. Obviously, I'm a very young guy and in North America, and so I don't know that part of Britpop, so to speak. But I mean, if you just take it as a monkey rock star going through the ups and downs of being a rock star and that whole journey, it's fun, man. The musical numbers are really good. I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than the CGI monkey gives a really good performance.
Do you want to retroactively add this to your honorable mentions? It sounds like you want to.
Well, I do want to, but I can't because it's not a 2024 movie. It's a 2025, and I will not be creating exceptions here. But people should go watch Better Man. I get that the box office is struggling because it was...
Because Americans don't know who Robbie Williams is.
Because Americans don't know who Robbie Williams is, but also the movie would work better just as a monkey rock star. So I think that you should just go out and watch it, have a great time, go out and see it in Dolby like I did. And, I mean, you wouldn't come away regretting it. It's an incredible story and is incredibly told, and I was incredibly impacted, like straight up.
very quickly, as far as animated goes, we'll talk more about all of this when Oscar stuff comes out. Wild Robot versus Inside Out 2, animated feature. Who is taking the lead on that?
For me, it would be Wild Robot, just because the stuff that DreamWorks did visually in that one was amazing in terms of how they made the nature look, and it kind of reminds me of The Good Dinosaur in that sense, which I really loved. And so I think that the obviously Lupita Nyong'o has also had a lot of Oscar success, and so I think that might carry over as well. But I think just kind of a weaker year for animation.
I disagree.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah, Cook.
I mean, well, again, Inside Out 2 I really liked. I adored The Wild Robot. It just barely made my own. You know what? I'll retroactively say that. Wild Robot and honorable mentions. I don't know why I missed that. It should absolutely be there. Wallace and Gromit, which I've only made about partway through, but everyone adores, and could be a dark horse.
Critics' Choice Best Picture or something?
I did not see that.
It was the North Dakota Critics Circle thing. They had it in Best Picture. That's not Critics' Choice. Yeah.
But no, that good for North Dakota.
Yeah.
Flo is apparently incredible. That's the other thing. Flo wins the Golden Globe in a 2-year span of the Golden Globes doing, hey, we want to choose the weird movies to win for animated movies.
And the foreign one. How interesting.
Yes, so Flo could be kind of that surprise boy in the heron type thing. Moving on, because there's two other quick questions I want to ask. Actress, we talked about Mikey Madison. The other threat to that is Demi Moore for The Substance.
Demi Moore, I would totally applaud. I think that performance is incredible as well, especially given the scope of it in terms of she's personifying her character in real life in a way. And so I think that part of it, she obviously gave a really good speech at the Golden Globes, and sometimes good speeches can propel you forward in an Oscar race. So I think that really either Demi Moore and Mikey Madison would be the two picks for that. I think that maybe one thing we should do on our Oscar nomination show is kind of pinpoint 2 from each category as these 2 could win as best we can when we get there. Yeah. And I think that could be fun.
And finally, the Wicked question. Because I have seen every other conversation about this about either Wicked is going to totally sweep or it's going to get nothing.
It's going to get box office. It's going to get cinematic achievement.
We don't have that for the Oscars.
Oh, they don't still?
I think they only did that in 2021.
Oh, wow. I thought Barbie got it or something. Was that just at the Golden Globes?
I think that was just the Globes, yeah.
Huh. Well, Oscars, get on it.
No, don't do that.
Make a box office achievement award.
No, we did that in 2021. It was a bad idea.
I enjoy it as an idea. But no, I
also enjoy ideas.
I think Wicked is exactly what so much of the movie industry is missing in terms of just things that can excite moviegoers. Because obviously there was a big sect of people who this was, obviously they're the intended audience, the intended demographic. And I think that movies that really stoke the fires of really any large movie fan base, I think that those movies should earn a spot at the Oscars, because they are really propelling whether the movie industry is at top health or not.
Yes.
Don't you think?
And I agree with that in principle, but there's also the added thing of Wicked in particular is a beloved movie. There's no way of looking at
and beloved music.
And beloved and it's not a thing where just, there's a sect of, half critics and audiences who are really diehards for it. No, it's, I think it's 91 or 92 on Rotten Tomatoes right now. It's broken box office records. It's, getting a lot of awards and critics loves. For me, I'm not necessarily on the it will make it into picture train yet. I don't think John M. Chu has a chance for director, unfortunately. I do think Ariana Grande is the big one to watch for supporting actress. I think she's got a major shot.
She is funny.
And I think for production design, too, because the whole idea of recreating Oz in this new I think those are the big 2 that we really have to watch for Wicked.
I could not believe how funny Ariana Grande was as Galinda, and completely capturing the same stuff that made Kristen Chenoweth so remarkable at it. The things like flopping yourself onto the bed in a show of dramatics, things like that.
Or just the slight twitchy smile. Almost.
Yeah, and full control over what her face and, everything are doing. And obviously an incredible singer as well. So I think that she is certainly a dark horse to be seen in that category.
So with that being said, let's quickly just recap our 5 for the viewers. You first.
Yeah, so my 5 were Civil War, A Complete Unknown, Longlegs, Strange Darling, and Anora in reverse order. So Anora the best. Sorry.
And my 5 from 5 to 1 were Oh, geez. I'm blanking. My 5 from 5 to 1.
Conclave.
Yes, sorry. Edward Berger's Conclave.
Dune.
Eagle News, Dune Part 2.
The Timothy Chalamet slot.
Yes, the Timothy Chalamet slot. Josh Margolin's Thelma. I then had Brady Corbett's The Brutalist, and then Jesse Eisenberg's A Real Pain. So that will do it for 2024. Leading into 2025, hopefully it'll be as good of a year, if not better than 2024. It'd be nice.
Could you imagine if Better Man is in my top 5?
If we're here in a year from now and I see that on your number 5, I might just walk out of the room and just surprise.
No, there are a lot of great movies supposed to be coming up in 2025, so
yes.
We are certainly looking forward to it and certainly looking forward to talking about it as well.
Of course. Hopefully we can be back in this room. Hopefully we can get more videos out to you guys. The reviews will still be coming. We'll be talking about more hopefully in the future. For now, though, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at KTAR News. Follow our social media accounts. You can check out Damon and I's videos over on our TikTok page. And for now, I am Brandon King.
And I am Damon Allred.